It has been a wild year for the Bay Area housing market. We started off the year, we thought things were going to be hot, and then boom, all of a sudden we had a ton of inventory come on the market. And this summer has been an interesting one. We typically see inventory shoot up during the summer season, but not this summer. And now with the Fed cutting the rates just ever so slightly.
The central bank has just voted to cut interest rates by a quarter
to announce this first rate cut of the year, and they
too late, must cut interest rates.
What does this mean for the Bay Area housing market heading into the fall of 2025? Coming up on this Silicon Valley Snapshot. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Gould. I'm a local realtor here in the Bay Area, and over the last decade, I've sold well over $250 million worth of residential real estate, helped nearly 300 families buy and sell homes here in the Bay Area. And I have dedicated the last 10 years to really studying and understanding the data here in Silicon Valley and understanding the dynamics of the market. And I have never seen a market quite like this one. And we're going to get into the data right now. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what is happening in the Bay Area in real time. But before we do that, if you're a home buyer in today's market and you're looking for a comprehensive data set to help you with your buying decision making, every area, every zip code, every neighborhood has a certain set of circumstances. And even though I'm going to give you a very macro overview of what's happening in the Bay Area housing market right now, every single neighborhood requires a different insight, and every single neighborhood requires a different perspective, because you need to understand what it's going to take to be competitive in the area that you're buying in. And if you're looking for a data set to help you with that, you can text the word data plus the area or the zip code or the neighborhood that you're looking in, and we will get that information sent straight to your inbox. And if you're a home seller in today's marketplace and you're looking for a data set to help you address the elephant in the room, the biggest question: what should I price my property at? Because remember, pricing is a marketing strategy, and we want to make sure that we're not dishonoring the home, but we're also not uninviting a large subset of buyers that could be interested in buying the house if we priced it at the right number. So if you want that information, you can text the word data plus your property address to the number down below, and that information is going to be sent straight to your inbox. This last month, we had a technical glitch with all of the data sets. And so if you tried getting the data within like the last 45 days or so, try again, and we will get that information sent to you. We now have access again to that data. So let's get into the rest of the snapshot. We're just going to dive straight into the numbers, starting with Santa Clara County. Now, as you see here on your screen, we have 1,436 homes active on the market and 961 homes pending. Guess what? This is actually good news for home sellers in particular. If you look, we really hit our apex, our peak inventory levels around the May-June timeframe, which is abnormal for the Silicon Valley housing market, specifically Santa Clara County. We typically see peak inventory levels in July, and this year was a little bit different. We hit our peak a little bit earlier in terms of inventory, and pending activity has stayed relatively consistent the last couple of months. So with demand staying relatively even keeled and less inventory on the market now than we are used to seeing relatively to this time of year, meaning month over month, we're used to seeing a little bit more growth month over month between June and July. And then from June to August, we typically see about the same amount of inventory. So we actually have 300 fewer homes on the market right now. That's bringing that absorption rate up a little bit to the point where things feel a lot different now for home buyers than they did even a couple of months ago. And so this really feeds into my theory. I think in May, June, one of the last snapshots that I filmed, we were looking at the data here, and I hypothesized that we might actually see a little bit of a decrease in inventory levels during the summer, because we kind of oversaturated the market, and we were feeling that in real time. We were going out and homes were sitting that typically would never sit. These are homes that a few years ago would have 5, 10, 15 offers on them. And there would be weeks without a single showing or a single offer coming into the property. And it felt like the market was oversaturated with inventory. Well, guess what? The market reacts in real time. And when that happens, guess what? People pull their homes off the market. They're not going to just sit there and pretend to sell their house. If the home isn't selling, they're going to pull it off the market. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing new inventory being introduced to the market, yes, but some of that excess inventory or additional inventory that didn't move in the mid to late spring, that inventory got pulled off, and we're no longer compounding the inventory levels, or the inventory levels, I should say, aren't quite compounding at the rate that it was during the springtime. Because in the springtime, a lot of homes that should have sold in March didn't sell. And we see, new homes or new inventory coming on in April. Well, then we've got new inventory coming on in April, plus a bunch of the homes that didn't sell in March. And then we start to compound. Well, at a certain point, we hit our inflection point, and we hit that inflection point in around May, June of this year in Santa Clara County. And now we're seeing the effects or the aftermath of that. Flipping on over to San Mateo County. August of this year, we have 391 homes pending, 600 homes active on the market. Same trend though. And if we pay attention to the trends, we see, okay, we really hit our inflection point around that May timeframe in all up and down the peninsula. Yep. And that means that we had like an earlier wave of inventory. We hit that inflection point, and now the market is recalibrating and readjusting because sellers don't want to lose money. Let me explain. They know what their neighbor sold for 3 years ago, and they're looking at what they could get for their home today. They get an offer today, and they're saying, honey, there's no way we're going to take that. And so sellers are banking right now on the market rebounding. And the ones that are absolutely needing to sell are the ones that are not selling right now. And so because of that, we're seeing more and more homes come off the market and fewer homes being introduced to the market because sellers are thinking twice about putting their home on the market in a weak period. They're saying, honey, why are we going to put the home on the market now when the market's weak? Why don't we just wait a year or two? It's the same cycle happening again. I think we're at the precipice of what happened in the beginning of 2000 or in the middle of 2022, mid to late 2022, where we saw a bunch of homes get pulled off. We saw a bunch of sellers retract and recalibrate. And 2023 was actually not a horrible year for selling a home. You weren't going to get top dollar for your house, but we certainly weren't in a high inventory environment like we are right now. I mean, you look back to even 2024, a year ago in Santa Clara County, for example, in June of 2025, 1,700 homes active on the market. We had 1,200 homes active on the market in June of 2024. And right now in August, same thing, 1,400 homes on the market this year. We only had 1,161 homes active on the market last year. And so I think what we're starting to see is a recalibration period in the marketplace from a seller's perspective. We're going to talk about what this means for buyers in a second. But in Alameda County, we see the same trend, right? And so we're seeing it not just in up and down the peninsula, but we're also seeing it in Alameda County and in the East Bay, where that we hit our inflection point in June. And now from 1,722 homes active on the market in May, we have 1,445 homes active and 756 homes pending here in August. Same concept though. Our pending activity has stayed relatively stagnant. It's stayed very consistent. So demand has found its resting place for now. And now we're starting to see inventory levels creep down. Sellers are saying, they're putting their foot down and they're saying, we aren't going to sell right now. We don't need to sell right now. And we're going to wait for prices to come back to what they were at. Now, how long is that going to take? Your guess is as good as mine. Probably going to take a few more rate cuts. But Contra Costa County is the only outlier here where we had an increase in inventory levels from July to August with 1,746 homes active on the market in August and 839 homes pending. Now, the one thing is we did see pending sales also increase. So pending sales increased about 10%, and we had about we'll call it a 12 to 15% increase in active inventory. So pending activity didn't necessarily go up 1 for 1 or percentage wise, meaning the absorption rate ratio from July to August decreased just ever so slightly, but pending sales did keep up rather well with that increase in inventory. So that additional inventory was mostly absorbed, but not fully. That's the only outlier here. And if we look at the trends in general, though, what we're seeing is sellers have hit their breaking point in most parts of the Bay Area right now. And we are seeing that in the inventory levels. And we're seeing the inventory levels come back down ever so slightly. It's not huge shifts in inventory, but from May to June, if we just look at percentages, right? 1,760 to 1,400. Well, That's about a 17 to 20% decrease. In San Mateo County, we had, about a 20% decrease again as well. In Alameda County, same thing, about a 15 to 20% decrease. In Contra Costa, we still saw a decrease from May to June. So we still hit our inflection point in May of 1,900 properties on the market. We came down about 7 to 8% from June to August. So what does this mean for the Bay Area housing market now and heading into the rest of 2025? Well, here's what I know. Typically after Labor Day, we see a little bit of resurgence in the market. The market rallies from Labor Day to around mid-November. And then around mid-November, that's when people start really winding up for the holidays and winding down their home search or their home sale process for the holiday season, right? So they taper back on that typically and then go full send on the holidays and then come back at the beginning of the new year. Well, here's what remains to be seen. What are inventory levels going to do over the next 90 days? Are we going to see inventory levels continue to come down? Because again, inventory levels take a lot longer to react than buyers take to react. So, for example, the Fed decreasing rates by 25 bips yesterday. Is that going to stimulate the market to the point where we have multiple offers everywhere? No, absolutely not. 25 bips is not a lot. But for savvy buyers, for smart buyers who see the writing on the wall, this is the first of probably several cuts that are coming up in the next 6 to 12 months. And so as a buyer, you're like, okay, well, winter is coming. And by winter is coming, I mean, we know that once we see a significant decrease in rates where all in all we have like 1 to 1.5 points worth of relief here over the next year-ish or so, that's going to cause a lot of buyers to come back into the marketplaces. And what's that going to do? That's going to put upward pressure on prices. Same thing goes for sellers. At some point, all of this news is going to stimulate or incentivize some of these sellers or clue some of these sellers into maybe we should sell right now. Maybe we should start preparing our home for sale. And especially for the ones that couldn't sell last year, right? So take into consideration everyone that tried to sell their home in March, April, and May of this year. The spring market, the wonderful, glorious spring market wasn't so wonderful to most sellers this spring. And so the sellers that weren't able to accomplish their mission are going to think about putting their home back on the market. So this is kind of how I see things falling into place here over the next 90 days or so. Assuming that inventory levels don't do anything crazy over the next 90 days, I anticipate that we will see a little bit of stimulation on the buy side in the market over the next couple of months. That isn't necessarily going to put pressure on prices, but it is going to move inventory faster. And that's going to eliminate some of that additional inventory that's sitting on the market right now. Come New Year, especially if we see more relief from the Fed with interest rates, I do expect to see more and more buyers come into the marketplace. Now, buyers come into the marketplace faster than sellers put their home on the market. And so I could see a scenario in which we have an early spring market again this year, where the best time to actually sell your home is going to be like early-ish part of Q1. Too early to really determine that. I think a lot of that really depends on what's going to happen with the rates and what happens here with inventory levels over the next 90 days. But you can rest assured that we're going to bring you the latest and greatest data to make sure that you're ahead of the curve and really stay ahead of these trends, because you don't want to fall behind the 8 ball right now, especially if you're a home buyer. But even as a home seller, your advantage is in making sure you eliminate or have the least amount of competition possible, right? And typically, historically, the least amount of competition usually occurs at the beginning part of the year, almost every year. First, call it 4 to 6 weeks of the year are typically the best time to have the least amount of competition. It's not always the best time to sell, although a lot of times it is. But this year, we could really see that come into full effect, where if we see more relief from interest rates towards the latter part of this year, a lot of the reaction from buyers, a lot of the buyers are going to come in full force at the beginning of 2026. And that's going to potentially catch the ears and eyes of a lot of sellers who weren't able to sell last spring. And so we could see this reactionary effect where a lot of sellers see what's happening in the market at the beginning of Q1 of next year. And then we see a surge of inventory levels towards the latter part of Q1 heading into Q2. And the traditional spring market, we could see kind of what we saw again this year, where we have this growth of inventory in the spring that is unabsorbable, because the market's not going to bear all of that additional inventory. So this is speculation at this point. This is not necessarily my prediction, but it is probably the scenario that I'm going to I would say bank on the most. Like of all the possible scenarios, I think that one is the most likely. The second most likely, I think, is honestly like the rates don't really do much over the next 6 months, and we don't really see a ton of movement. But I don't anticipate, if that's the case, I really don't anticipate inventory levels moving too much over the next 6 months or so, because sellers are now very aware of what the market conditions are at this point. And I don't think that sellers are going to be making, a lot of sellers here in the Bay Area are in a position where they don't need to sell. And so if there's no movement from an economic perspective or a rate perspective, if there are no leading indicators of an improving market, we're not going to see the same drastic inventory hike that we saw at the beginning of this spring period in 2025. So again, you can rest assured that we're going to bring you the latest and greatest data, everyone. And before I conclude this video, I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone back at home, whether you're a home buyer or a seller, everyone's situation is a little bit unique. And this is a really challenging market. It's a challenging market to navigate as a buyer and a seller, especially right now with all the turbulence and the turmoil. And even though I just gave you a very macro overview, everyone's situation is unique. And so if you want to talk about your situation and understand, how we could partner together and how we can help you either buy the perfect home, the home of your dreams, or help you sell your home for the highest possible price, you can text the word consult to the number down below. That's consult to the number down below. I will personally reach out to you, set a time to meet with you via Zoom, and go over your situation and see if it's a good fit. We're not right for everybody, but if you've made it this far in the video and you found value in this video, chances are we're going to work together just fine. My best clients come from YouTube, and I really enjoy working with all the clients that come to us from this channel. This is Danny Gould, everyone. I am selling Silicon Valley. That's the end of this snapshot, and I will catch all of you in the next video.